a quick introduction to scenario-based training for those new to it. Basically, it's a way of teaching or training using a virtual, interactive, problem-based context. So, the main thing about scenario-based training is that it is a safe environment in which learners can really test out their responses and see what the implications are. So, it's a risk-free environment, and the situations and the scenarios that we use mirror the real world. Now, it may not always be possible to have exposure to every single situation in the real world, but using scenario based training, we can present these hypothetical situations which the learner may encounter or is very likely to encounter. And the reason why scenario based training works is because learners are drawn into a problem, and they are given feedback progressively as they progress through solving the problem. And of course, as many of you pointed out in your selections, it gives you a chance to assess their performance in a real world scenario, what they would do, what if. So they get a chance to apply their prior experience, their critical thinking skills, and their knowledge of the subject. Now, what are the benefits? I think for most of us, one of the biggest benefits is that they are very engaging. They're a very engaging and memorable way to make sure that learners can retain the content. Not just retain, but also comprehend the content. So it helps both in comprehension as well as recall. And scenarios can also be fun because there is no risk, and you're still encouraged to explore the various options. And then the other benefit is, of course, provided your scenarios mirror your real life, they can set a very realistic foundation, a very realistic platform for the learner to engage and test their knowledge. And as we looked at earlier, they're application based. Good scenarios are those which encourage the learner to synthesize what they know about a certain subject and arrive at the application. How would they do it when faced with such a situation? And these are especially ideal for gray areas and sensitive topics. For instance, it's not always, it doesn't always work when you discuss in an ILT something as sensitive as sexual harassment, for instance, because learners may not even speak up, or they may hesitate to respond. But this is where setting up scenarios in an e-learning can really drive home the point much more effectively than it would if you were just to give them a list of policies that learners have to just go through. And sensitive topics, as I mentioned, and gray areas where there are really no right and wrong responses as such, but the learner is forced to think through the implications and then decide for themselves which is the best option. And so some more benefits here: a better understanding of implications in a risk-free environment. So not only do learners get a chance to identify potential risks, but they can also think through the mitigation points for each of those. And who doesn't love a good story, right? I think for those of us who use storytelling and scenarios in our training, we found that the learners are likely to complete that training. They're likely to visit that page. They're likely to do better in the assessment because there is better retention. And excuse me, of course, there is better participation because, everybody likes a good challenge. So the moment you're faced with a problem, even in real life, I think all our gray cells go into overdrive. So this is what happens when we use scenarios in our e-learning. You just draw the learner in, and engaging the learner becomes so much more easier, so that for the rest of the course too, you have the learner's attention. And again, because it's a risk-free environment and learners are free to explore choices, they can confront their fears and see what are the implications, and then that cuts off a lot of apprehension in the learner's mind.